Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be teaching you guys about simple shapes and volumes. So let's get started first really simply. Let me go ahead and zoom out so I can go ahead and draw with clarity. Sometimes I always get a bit confused on exactly how far I'm zoomed in. So anyways, let's get started with simple shapes. So these are the kind of shapes that you'll see most often when it comes to figure drawings or just drawing in general, which is circles, squares, and triangles. And it's not as complicated as you think. It's just more, well, it's more like, it's not as simple as you think. It's actually a little bit more complicated, but in a good way. So when it comes to circles, a lot of people, when it comes to these certain shape languages, they have a lot of artists have a tendency to kind of categorize them into just one category, when in reality, it's actually a lot more than that. So let's start with circles first. Of course, this is not going to be entirely going to be filling them, it's not going to be totally lined up, but I'll just do my best. So when it comes to circles, circles are generally more geared towards cutesy, more fun, more friendly. So you can kind of group them together. This is how you can use circles. You can use them to group together, or most commonly used in figure drawing is half circles. So that usually gives a more rounder feeling. So especially when you draw more heavier people, you'll use circles more often. So what I mean by half circles is sort of something like this that you see a lot in like figure drawing books. Can also kind of just, kind of draw your lines more rounder, make things more just kind of rounded out, so kind of more rounded forms. So these are more just how you would use the circle. For triangles, this is more of an active form, or sorry, I'm gonna go with squares first because that's in the order. So when it comes to squares, that's more on stability. Most of the time it's more stability or overlaps. So for instance, if you want to make like a bulky character, what you want to do is you want to make sure that your character looks more squarish, although not literally a square, but just more squarish. But it's also really good with overlaps. So what people do is you have one layer over the other. That's what it's really good for when it comes to squares. So these are a more simplified way of how to kind of construct your figure. You can even use this for simple shapes. For instance, if I want to draw an arm, here's the upper arm, and here's the forearm. Very simple, very easy. Just kind of use them as like dimensional tools. And then lastly, we have our triangles, which I'm going to slide over a bit here. And that is more towards action. So a lot of the misconception with triangles is that, that it means evil, or it means something bad, or it means something dangerous. Not necessarily. It just means more like action. So, because for instance, if you see like a good character with more triangular forms, it doesn't necessarily mean they're bad, it just means they're more dynamic in their design. So what you can do to show action is, kind of just drawing some triangles here and there. And that already automatically just kind of shows like some dynamic contrast and action. You can overlap them, kind of create some spikes here and there. Can kind of overlap them once again. But most of the time, it can be crystals. For example, if you want to draw some crystals, you can group these triangular forms together and nobody would bat an eye. They'll be like, oh yeah, that's kind of like a crystal, right? Or that's kind of like a sharp plant, right? Aloe vera or those kind of plants in general are very sharp with a kind of rounded edge. You can group these together, for instance. And that's how you would usually use these shapes when it comes to drawing. So, and another thing when it comes to squares in a bit, which I'll go into volumes, are boxes, and I will get to that right now. So, oh, by the way, circle stands, or passive is P, that's for circles. Stability and structure is squares, and then action is triangles. Okay, so PSA. Anyways. Public speaking announcement. I don't know what that means. So anyways, now let's go up to volumes. Now volumes are going to be a little bit more fun. This is more like this is just more of like a 3D version of these forms. So what kind of, I guess I'll ask just to kind of get some seemingly kind of fun interaction. What kind of figures or what kind of volumes would you kind of see when it comes to triangles? You would automatically think triangular prisms and cylinders. Sorry, not cylinders, cones. I'm sorry about that. and they're very easy. So let's do a cone first. When it comes to a cone, all we have to do is just draw an ellipse. 1, and then 2. That's it. You know, that's all you can do to draw a cone, really. So that is a cone. Now when it comes to a triangular prism, there's kind of two kinds. There's one that is more like, you know, you draw kind of like a square in a more of a diagonal feel, and then you bring these two up into a point. That's a triangular prism, or maybe a pyramid. Sorry about that. This is a pyramid. And then you have a triangular prism, which is more like a flat triangle towards the side, and then kind of end this way. That's a triangular prism. Now when it comes to a circle, most of the time we would view this as a cylinder. And all we really have to do is just draw an ellipse, which is a circle into perspective. It's not necessarily an oval, although that's a more simpler way to put it. Then we have our ellipse right at the top. Then we have the sphere, which usually we have to usually kind of do it or show it when we shade it. So I think I'll just shade it for now. Here is our core shadow, which is our main shadow. And here is our kind of darker shadow and kind of a bounce light. So I'm just going to do that real quick. And then we have a box for the square. Now, box is actually really easy. You guys don't really have to do perspective grid for this in the end. This is just more of a abstract feel to it, you know. Perspective and vanishing points and horizon line is just usually the abstract version. Or just kind of like the more, it's kind of just more like, oh, well, this is how it's actually done in space, you know. And usually that would be very useful. So, how do I draw a box without a grid then? Well, that's really easy. All you have to think is, where is your box facing? If it's facing in front of us, you will see the main square kind of leaning towards us more. Whoops, that's a bad line there. Anyways, then you would kind of think about where it's going. Is it going this way? Well, it is. So then what we do is we kind of just push these towards the vanishing point. So fanning, because it's kind of going, it's kind of showing like a little fan, you know. Fanning, compared to this, fanning, straight, fanning. That's it. Now, Will Weston would probably go more like fanning, straight, which I think I'll try that right now. So, I would say more like, let's say, for instance, if we're going to do 1 point perspective, let me do this one down here. So, it's more like fanning. This is more towards us, straight. There you have a box, automatically. Now there's definitely a lot more complicated ways to do this. But for now, let's just do it like this. So let's say fanning, straight. Or more like fanning this way. Anyways, straight, fanning, straight, or fanning, whichever it is. As you go straight when you're going straight down most of the time, especially if it's just a 2-point perspective feel. But when you're kind of going in convergence, you would usually go fanning, straight, you know, stuff like that. Anyways, that's just really how you draw a box in that form, or in that very simplified way. Then I'm going to talk to you guys just really briefly about squish and stretch, or simple and complex. And this is just more of a side note, but it's really helpful when it comes to doing form exercises. So what do I mean by that? So when you look at the waist, for example, let's say I'm going to draw a box here, 2 boxes. Let's say this is your rib cage, and this is your pelvis. If your pelvis is bending this way, or like you're just in general, like you're kind of going this way more, you would see a bit of squish here. And what that simply is just you have a simple and then you have complex. Then you can kind of complete the form. You can do that in multiple ways. You can even take a box and do that. So complex, simple, can even use this as a pillow or a bean. Let's do a bean one. Very, very simple. That's simple and complex basically in a nutshell. It's basically squish and stretch. This is stretch where it's more simple, and then this is squish, right? Anyways, so that is pretty much it. I don't think I really have much else when it comes to that. Oh, actually, yeah, I do. I want to actually just talk briefly about volumes really quick, or just ribbons in general. So let me go ahead and scoot this over. Let me see if I have enough room. Let me move my camera over just a little bit. Okay, so when it comes to ribbons, ribbons are actually kind of underrated. I feel like when it comes to the art community, it feels like they should be more. It's really important when it comes to drawing hair, or even when it comes to drawing clothes as well. So let's actually just draw a ribbon. So when it comes to ribbon, it's very, very simple. What you want to do is draw 3 lines. Let's see here, and then connect the 2. So let's say this one kind of comes over. This is kind of going towards the back. It's going more towards the front. This is where we go and end. So we have one down here, one here, and then you see a little bit of this one going towards the back. That is basically a ribbon in a nutshell. So it's kind of like forms kind of overlapping each other. Let's do another one. Let's say we have a ribbon going downward like this. We can basically just kind of put in some nice little ends here. And then what we can do to show some form is to just kind of shade this in a little bit. So when it comes to the core shadow, you want to just kind of put that right where it kind of starts bending. And then when it reaches kind of like a halfway point, you kind of want to go half tone, meaning lighter tone. So core, half, because it's kind of getting some bounce light. Core again. Core, half tone, and then starting to go core again. And then, if you want to have more dynamic feel to it, you can add some turning edges. And turning edges are really nice because it's just more of like a line that kind of just shows that there's some nice form going along. And this works for cylinders as well. So let me go ahead and draw a cylinder with some form added to it. And this, I can go over more of this in depth later on, but let's just go ahead and do that real quick. Let's see, where do I put this? Okay, let me just draw a cylinder right here. So let's say, for instance, let me draw a cylinder. So depending on where your light is, let's say, for instance, the light is going from the top here. If this is a metallic cylinder, this is your core shadow, and it's very strong. Your core shadow is generally right before the lighter tones. Then, as you go down, here is your turning edge, which is kind of like your half tone here. But it kind of shows like a nice. It's kind of like a nice little line that kind of shows that this is kind of the stopping point. Let me zoom in real quick to show you guys. So here's your core. Here's your turning edge right before the holding line. Holding line is basically the line that just holds the shape together. So holding line. Then we have a half tone towards the other turning edge on the side. Just make it just a little bit lighter. And just by doing that, you can already see some volume going on. This is the holding line at the end. This is the turning edge or the half tone. So half tones are generally turning edges, just to show you the volume, and then the core shadow is just where the main shadow is compared to the light. So when it comes to boxes, I want to do one more thing, so you guys can kind of see what's going on with boxes here. I'm going to put that right below here. So when it comes to boxes, the important thing is that you want to make sure that when you're doing boxes, let me go ahead and put up my notes here. We want to make sure that we see all three sides, especially when it's the most dynamic for us. So here is one type of box, and this is just more of like a depth perspective feel. So here we have one side. That is the flattest you want to go, and that is usually best for back views, or like your background. Let me zoom in. So that's one. Then our next one is two sides. So two sides is basically, we see one side and the other side. That is for more closer object to you. That's more closer to you. Sorry, my language is not very good. English is not good, even though I'm an American. Anyways, so here we have our second, number 2, which is just showing two sides. And then to kind of contrast that, we're going to do one on 3 sides. So we have one side here, fanning, fanning, straight, straight, fanning, fanning, straight, straight. So here we see 3 sides, 1, 2, and 3. And guess which one has the most depth? Well, obviously the third one. And that's what you want to show most in your subject. So if you're kind of doing backgrounds, you want to kind of go by this kind of feel to it. So let's see if I have anything else to do or else to kind of take note of. I don't think so. I think the next thing that we will do is probably more like just applying these shapes together. So let me go ahead and zoom out and just show you guys what we all did. Come on. Okay, so first we kind of did a little overview on simple shapes, circles, squares, and triangles. You know, circles are basically more passive forms and can be used for more like voluminous feel to your figures. This is more structure based, more overlaps, and then triangles for more sharper angles or for more dynamic feel to it. And here are some forms, some 3D forms. You know, you have your cone, pyramid, and triangular prism, your cylinder, your sphere, your stretch and squish, your boxes, your views and box in different views for the boxes and seeing which one is the most important. Then we have some ribbons and some halftones and shading. So let me know what you guys think about this. Let me know, just let me know what you guys think about this. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.